My sister didn't invite me to her wedding, so I watched the live stream. Until the screen froze on something shocking. It started with silence. Not the quiet, comfortable kind, but the loud, empty kind. The kind that tells you something is fundamentally wrong. There was no cream-colored invitation in my mailbox with elegant calligraphy. No save-the-date magnet on my refrigerator. No casual mention of wedding plans during our monthly phone calls that had somehow dwindled to nothing. I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding. Not as a bridesmaid, not as a guest, not even as an afterthought. I found out the way you discover everything these days, through other people's happiness splashed across social media. I sat alone in my cramped studio apartment in Portland, staring at a single, cold hyperlink in my email. My sister Rebecca had sent it 2 days before her big day. The subject line was blank. The body contained one sentence: if you want to watch. That link was supposed to be a kindness, I suppose. A last-minute olive branch. But it felt like being handed a backstage pass to watch from the parking lot. It felt like being told to press my nose against the window of a 5-star restaurant while my family celebrated inside. That should have been humiliating enough. That should have been the end of this story. But what happened during that live stream, the moment the screen froze and their perfect picture shattered, that changed everything. Hi, I'm Maya. I'm 28, and I work as a freelance graphic designer from my 1-bedroom apartment overlooking the Willamette River. I pay my own bills, buy my own groceries, and I've built a life that's beautifully, peacefully simple. I come from a family that thrives on complexity, the messy, dramatic kind that looks perfect from the outside but feels toxic on the inside. We're from Georgia, where appearances matter more than authenticity, where Sunday dinners are performances, and where there have always been 2 categories in our family, Rebecca and everyone else. My younger sister Rebecca was what my mother called marriage material. Born with that Southern belle charm, she was homecoming queen, sorority president, the girl who could light up a room just by walking into it. She was everything our parents had dreamed of in a daughter. Me? I was the bookworm in the corner. The one who preferred sketching to socializing, who found peace in quiet coffee shops rather than crowded parties. I learned early that the easiest way to survive family gatherings was to smile, nod, and make myself invisible. It was safer that way. Less disappointing for everyone involved. When we were little girls sharing a room with butterfly wallpaper, Rebecca and I were best friends. We built blanket forts and shared midnight snacks smuggled from the kitchen. But high school changed everything. Suddenly, the secrets we'd whispered became weapons she used against me. I started hearing my own insecurities repeated back to me through other people's mouths. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. Rebecca discovered she had power, the kind that comes with perfect teeth, effortless popularity, and parents who beam with pride every time you walk into a room. Meanwhile, I discovered I had become background noise in my own family story. It started with small comments that cut deep. At family barbecues, my father would brag about Rebecca's latest achievements, her sorority leadership roles, her internship at the mayor's office, her engagement to the son of Atlanta's most prominent real estate developer. Then he'd turn to me with an awkward pause, and Maya's doing art stuff. That's nice too, I guess. My mother wasn't cruel, just perpetually disappointed. She'd sigh while looking through my closet during visits home. Honey, maybe you could borrow one of Rebecca's dresses? You'd look so much prettier if you just tried a little harder. The message was crystal clear. Rebecca was the standard I'd never reach. The breaking point came during Rebecca's engagement party. I wasn't involved in the planning, despite living just 4 hours away in Portland. I found out about it the same way I found out about most family events, through Instagram stories. My cousin posted photos of the elegant garden party at my parents' country club. White roses everywhere, champagne flowing, Rebecca glowing in a pale pink sundress while showing off a diamond that could probably pay my rent for 2 years. I was sitting in my apartment eating leftover Thai food, scrolling through images of my entire extended family celebrating without me. My grandmother, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen since Christmas, everyone was there. Everyone except me. I should have confronted them then. Should have called and demanded an explanation. Instead, I did what I'd always done. I made excuses for them. They probably assumed I was too busy with work. Portland was far. Last-minute planning. I was an expert at lying to myself, at cushioning their neglect with my own understanding. But the wedding planning process revealed the truth I'd been avoiding. 6 weeks before the big day, my mother hosted what she called a family coordination brunch at their house. Key relatives gathered to finalize details, seating arrangements, flower selections, menu choices for the reception. I found out about it through a Facebook post from my aunt, getting everything perfect for our beautiful bride. Family teamwork at its finest. I stared at that photo for a long time. My mother's dining room table covered with wedding magazines, sample centerpieces, and what looked like a detailed seating chart. My father carving ham at the buffet. Rebecca in the center of it all, radiant and decisive, the undisputed star of the show. My hands shook as I typed out a text to Rebecca. Hey, saw the planning brunch looked lovely. Wish I could have helped. The response came hours later. It was mainly for people in the wedding party. You understand? No, I didn't understand. But I was beginning to. The last blow came exactly 48 hours before Rebecca's wedding day. I had spent weeks building walls around my heart, telling myself I was better off without their drama, that I'd escaped their toxic need for perfection. I had almost convinced myself I didn't care. Then that email arrived. The sender was Rebecca, but there was no warmth in it. No subject line, no greeting, no explanation. Just a single hyperlink and 5 cold words, if you want to watch. I stared at that message for 20 minutes. This wasn't an invitation. It was a charity case. It was cruelty wrapped in the pretense of inclusion. The subtext was deafening. You're not good enough to be here in person, but you can watch from the cheap seats. You can see exactly what you're missing. I should have deleted it immediately. Should have closed my laptop, taken a long walk along the river, maybe treated myself to dinner at that new Italian place downtown. Instead, a dark curiosity took hold. I had to see it. I had to witness the performance I'd been excluded from, the fairy tale they'd crafted without me. So there I sat on Rebecca's wedding day, alone in my apartment wearing an old Stamford sweatshirt and leggings. On my laptop screen, a fantasy was unfolding in high definition. The live stream was professionally produced with multiple camera angles. It opened with a sweeping shot of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Buckhead, the kind of venue that requires connections and a hefty donation just to book. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across walls draped in white orchids and southern magnolias. The place was packed beyond capacity. I started recognizing faces in the crowd. My aunts and uncles in the front rows, dressed in their Sunday best. My parents looking proud and polished, my mother dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief she'd probably bought specifically for this moment. Extended family I hadn't spoken to in years. Neighbors from our old subdivision. Even Mrs. Henderson, my high school English teacher, was there for some reason. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. The music swelled, Pachelbel's canon, because of course it was. The guests rose to their feet like a choreographed wave. The camera panned to the back of the church, and there was Rebecca. She looked like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. Her dress was a masterpiece of silk and lace, her hair swept into an elegant chignon, her makeup flawless under the church's golden lighting. But when the camera zoomed in on her face as she began her walk down the aisle, I saw something that made my stomach turn. That same smirk she used to give me in high school hallways when she just told her friends something embarrassing about me. As she glided past rows of adoring faces on my father's arm, she did something I'll never forget. She looked directly into the main camera, the one broadcasting to outcasts like me, and winked. It was subtle, fleeting. No one else would have caught it. But it was unmistakably for me. Her final, silent message, I win. You lose. The ceremony began like something out of a Hollywood movie. Rebecca and her fiancé, Andrew, a trust fund baby whose family owned half of downtown Atlanta's real estate, stood at the altar looking like they'd been crafted by the gods of genetic perfection. Andrew was nervous but beaming, occasionally squeezing Rebecca's hands as the elderly priest spoke about love, commitment, and the sacred bonds of marriage. I felt sick watching it. All the air seemed to leave my lungs as I sat there witnessing my sister live out the life my family had always envisioned for her, a life from which I'd been surgically removed. The priest's voice droned on about honor and cherish, about richer and poorer, about sickness and health. We are gathered here today, the priest intoned, his voice carrying clearly through the church's sound system, to witness the union of Rebecca and Andrew in holy matrimony. This is a sacred covenant, built on trust, honesty, and unwavering devotion. The irony of those words would hit me later. Just as the priest was transitioning to the vows, the moment everyone had been waiting for, the screen glitched. It froze on a close-up of Rebecca's perfectly made-up face, her red lips curved in a serene smile. Then the image dissolved into a mess of colored pixels. A small spinning circle appeared in the center of my screen. Buffering. I sighed, tapping my fingers impatiently on my desk. Of course. Even the internet connection was working against me. 1 minute passed, then 2. I was about to give up and close the laptop when suddenly, boom, the live stream cut back in. But something was terribly wrong. The audio was playing, but the video remained frozen. And the audio wasn't the priest's calm, measured voice anymore. It was chaos. It was a man's voice, tight with fury and disbelief. Andrew's voice. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, his words echoing through the church's vaulted ceiling. The screen flickered, and the video feed burst back to life. But the serene wedding scene had transformed into something else entirely. Andrew stood frozen at the altar, but he wasn't looking at Rebecca with love and adoration anymore. He was looking down at his phone, which he gripped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He thrust the phone toward Rebecca's face, his own face bright red with rage. Her perfect makeup was already starting to smear as tears welled in her eyes. Her mouth hung open in pure horror. "Andrew, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. The microphone clipped to the priest's vestments picked up every panicked word. "Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" Andrew's voice was dangerously loud now, carrying to every corner of the packed church. He threw his phone down. It clattered against the stone floor with a sound that seemed to echo forever in the sudden, dead silence. The priest, looking absolutely terrified, took several awkward steps backward. My mother in the front row stood up, her face a mask of confusion and rising panic. My father looked like he might faint. Someone in the background, probably the wedding coordinator, could be heard frantically whispering, "Turn it off. Turn the live stream off right now." And then the screen went black. I sat frozen in my apartment, staring at the blank screen. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. What had just happened? What was on Andrew's phone that could destroy a wedding in front of 300 guests? The silence in my apartment felt deafening after the chaos I'd just witnessed. The perfect family picture, the one I'd been excluded from, had just been ripped to shreds in real time. And somehow, I'd had a front row seat to the destruction. It took 6 hours for the full story to emerge, filtering through social media whispers and frantic phone calls between family members. But when the truth finally came to light, it was stranger than anything I could have imagined. And I was standing right in the middle of it. You see, I wasn't just a simple graphic designer struggling to make rent in Portland. That was my day job, the one my family knew about and barely respected. But for the past 3 years, I'd been quietly building something else, a discreet digital forensics consulting firm. I specialized in cyber investigations for law firms handling sensitive cases. Cheating spouses, corporate espionage, identity theft. I helped attorneys and private clients uncover digital trails that people thought they'd erased forever. I was good at it. Very good. My clients never knew my real name or my personal details. I was just a secure email address they sent encrypted files to, a ghost in the machine who delivered results without asking questions. 4 months ago, a prestigious Atlanta law firm had contacted my business email. They were representing a wealthy client who needed a comprehensive digital background investigation on his fiancée before finalizing a substantial prenuptial agreement. The client had friends who'd been burned in messy divorces, and he wanted to be absolutely certain about his bride-to-be's fidelity before signing away millions. I took the case. It was straightforward work, the kind I'd done dozens of times before. I dove into the subject's digital footprint with professional detachment. Social media accounts, deleted messages, location data, credit card records, hotel receipts. I followed the trail wherever it led. What I found was damning. The bride-to-be was conducting a long-term affair with one of her fiancé's business partners. I uncovered deleted text messages, secret credit card payments for hotel rooms, photos she thought she'd erased from her phone's cloud backup. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. I compiled everything into a secure, encrypted report. I sent it back to the law firm, billed them for my time, and closed the case. I never learned the names of the people involved. Confidentiality was everything in my line of work. Until now. Until I sat staring at a black screen, replaying the chaos at that altar in my head. Andrew had been my client. Rebecca was the woman in my report. I had just watched my own sister's wedding implode because of evidence I had uncovered. Evidence that proved she'd been cheating on her fiancé with his business partner, a married man named David Chen who owned a chain of high-end restaurants across Atlanta. The irony was almost too much to process. My family had excluded me from their perfect day, treated me like I was invisible, like I didn't matter. But in the end, I was the one who brought it all crashing down, not out of revenge, but out of simple professional competence. I never broke confidentiality. I never told a soul about any of my cases. I had no idea that the investigation I'd conducted 4 months earlier involved my own sister. But the truth doesn't need help finding its way out. It has a way of surfacing at exactly the right moment. For 3 days after the wedding disaster, there was only silence. Then my phone exploded. 57 missed calls. 23 from my mother, 15 from my father, 12 from Rebecca calling from numbers I didn't even recognize. The rest came from bridesmaids, aunts, uncles, and family friends, all desperate to reach me, though I couldn't understand why. They left frantic voicemails. My mother's voice was shaky, half crying, half furious. "Maya, you need to call me back immediately. We need to talk. We need to figure out how to fix this mess. You have to help us fix this." Fix it. They wanted me to fix it. They didn't call to apologize for excluding me from the wedding. They didn't call to check if I was okay, or to explain why I'd been treated like a stranger at my own sister's celebration. They called because their perfect family image had been shattered on Livestream in front of everyone they knew, and somehow, through the magic of small-town gossip and social media detective work, they traced the fallout back to me. They needed something from me. Again. I didn't answer a single call. I didn't listen to more than one voicemail. Instead, I let them spin in their own chaos while I went about my normal routine. I grabbed coffee from my favorite cafe downtown, took a long walk through Washington Park, and worked on a logo design for a small nonprofit. Life went on. But I did do one thing. I picked up my phone, found Rebecca's number in my missed call log, and sent her a single text message. Guess the guest list wasn't the only thing you forgot to vet. I hit send, then immediately blocked her number. The satisfaction was immediate and complete. For 28 years, I'd been the accommodating one, the understanding one, the one who absorbed their disappointment and criticism without fighting back. I'd spent my entire life making excuses for their behavior, cushioning their neglect with my own rationalization. But watching them scramble, listening to them beg for my help to clean up a mess they'd created through their own deception and cruelty, that was enough. For the first time in my life, the tables had turned. They needed me, the invisible daughter, the disappointing sister. And I wasn't there for them. I didn't gloat. I didn't seek revenge. I simply wasn't available. The next morning, I woke up and made a decision that had been building for years. I took the money I'd been saving from my forensics work and officially incorporated my consulting firm. I hired my first full-time employee, a brilliant young woman fresh out of Georgia Tech's cybersecurity program. I signed a lease on a proper office space in a converted warehouse in southeast Portland, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick walls. For the first time in my adult life, I put all my energy into building something that was entirely mine, a business, a reputation, a life that my family had no part in and no power over. 2 weeks later, I booked a solo trip to Olympic National Park in Washington. I spent a week hiking through ancient forests and watching storms roll in over the Pacific Ocean. The air was clean and sharp, and I could finally breathe without feeling like I was suffocating under the weight of their expectations and disappointments. While standing on a cliff overlooking the gray, endless ocean, I took out my phone and went through my contacts methodically. I blocked my mother's number, then my father's, then every last aunt, uncle, and cousin who had ever made me feel small or insignificant. It wasn't an act of anger, it was an act of self-preservation. I was simply closing a door that should have been closed years ago. And for the first time in my life, I smiled while looking at a screen. Not because it glitched, but because I didn't. I was whole. I was stable. I was finally, beautifully free. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. My forensics firm had grown to 5 employees, and we'd moved into a larger office space in the Pearl District. We specialized in helping people uncover digital deceptions, ironic, considering how my own family had been deceiving themselves for years about who they really were. I'd started dating someone I met at a coffee shop, a marine biologist named Jordan who thought my quiet intensity was fascinating rather than disappointing. We took weekend trips to the Oregon coast, explored farmers markets, and had long conversations about everything and nothing. He knew about my family situation but didn't push me to reconcile or work things out. He understood that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. The wedding disaster had become Atlanta social media legend, though the details were fuzzy enough that most people didn't know I was connected to it. Rebecca's marriage had been annulled within a week. Apparently, Andrew's family had insisted on it once the full extent of her affair became public. She'd moved back in with my parents, according to the last bit of gossip I'd heard before completely disconnecting from that world. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, but I felt no guilt either. I hadn't caused her problems. I'd simply been exceptionally good at my job. The truth would have surfaced eventually. I just happened to be the professional who uncovered it. Sometimes, late at night in my apartment overlooking the Willamette River, I wondered if they ever talked about me. If they ever realized that their invisible daughter had been the one with the skills to build something meaningful, something lasting. If they ever connected the dots between my quiet competence and the disaster that had befallen their golden child. But mostly, I didn't think about them at all. I'd built a life that was entirely my own, filled with work that mattered, relationships based on mutual respect, and a peace I'd never experienced growing up. I'd learned that being forgotten by the wrong people was actually a gift. It had forced me to find my own strength, my own voice, my own worth. If you've ever been the forgotten sister, the outsider, the one who was never quite good enough for your own family, remember this: silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means they never saw you coming. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well without them. The truth is, I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their inclusion or their acknowledgement. I had built something better than their acceptance. I had built my own life, on my own terms. And that was worth more than any wedding invitation could ever be.